This is actually really hard. Hello everybody! So today I decided that I wanted to do a bookshelf challenge. This is the bookshelf scavenger hunt challenge. I thought this was such a fun way to look through the books that I have, maybe find a book that I forgot that I had and add it to my reading list. And I just thought it would be a fun little challenge. So behind me I have the bookshelf in my house, which is a collection of my parents' books, which are mostly up there, and my books, which are mostly on the bottom rows. I'll try to stick to books that I've read or I've brought in, but I might have to pull from some of the books that my parents read when they were my age or from their college books. So wish me luck! Alright, so the first challenge is to find a book or author's name that has the letter Z in it. So yes! Okay, so my mom was a psychology minor in college, and her advisor was Philip Zimbardo. He did something called the prison experiment, which I highly recommend looking that up because it was wild. But this one right here, Man Interrupted by Philip Zimbardo, that is my Z. Alright, so the next challenge is to find a classic, and that should be fairly easy. I have a whole shelf full of classics. I'm gonna go for my favorite classic, maybe, possibly my favorite classic, which is Shakespeare's Macbeth. Alright, so here is my copy of Shakespeare's Macbeth. So the next challenge is to find a book with a key on it, and this might be a little bit hard. I can't think of any off the top of my head. Wait, just kidding, I can. Alright, so this is a book that I've never read. It's called The Mahabharata Secret, and I have no idea what it's about, other than I think it's inspired by Indian mythology. But, yep, it has a key on it. So the next task is to find something on my bookshelf that's not a book, and this actually would have been so much easier before I reorganized my bookshelf very recently, and I took everything that wasn't a book off of my bookshelf, so okay, so I actually do have something that's not a book on my bookshelf. I have a flashlight because I was like trying to figure out my whole lighting situation before I realized that natural light was the best lighting, and I thought that this might come in handy, so I need to put this back where it belongs. The next task is to find the oldest book on my bookshelf, and that's actually probably gonna be pretty hard because a lot of these books are my parents' books, and I have no idea how old they are. But if we're just looking at books that I've read on this bookshelf, especially ones that I love, it's a copy of Edgar Allan Poe's work. Right here, it's called Poe's Masterpieces of Mystery. I don't think I could actually figure out how old it was, like when it was printed. It just says printed in the United States of America, which makes me feel like either it was just made to look old, or it's actually really, really old. But I have no idea. The next task is to find a book with a girl on the cover, and that's not going to be very hard at all. So I'm going for Throne of Glass, which has the main character on the cover. The next task is to find a book with an animal on the cover. I don't know how many books I read that are about animals, so this might take a little bit of work. Alright, so I found this book. It's called The Castings Trilogy, and I haven't read it, but it has a horse on the cover, and yeah, that's an animal. The next task is to find a book with a male protagonist, and I feel like there's a very obvious choice for this one, which is the Harry Potter series. Here we have Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. This book definitely holds a special place in my heart. The next challenge is to find a book with only words on the cover. Alright, so I don't know if this counts because there are colors, but this is a book called This Book is Gay by Gino Dawson, and it's kind of like a guide to being LGBTQ+. The next challenge is to find a book with illustrations in it. I have a bunch of books from when I was a kid on that shelf right there, so that's where I'm gonna go check. Alright, so this is one of the books that I read the most when I was a kid. It is probably the most unique kids book that I have, and it is my Quran Stories for Kids. It's very much a true kids book. It tells stories from the Quran. My grandma gave this to me, and she would read this to me when I was a kid, so it has a special place in my heart. The next task is to find a book with gold lettering on it. I think I'm gonna go for one of Rick Riordan's books. Alright. Alright, so this is the first book in the Heroes of Olympus series. As you can see, there's some gold lettering on it. The next task is to find a diary, either true or fictional, and I have the perfect book for this. So here is one of Taylor Swift's lover diaries. So part of this book is actually a diary for you to write in. It's just blank pages. But the beginning parts of this book are entries from Taylor Swift's diary. It's really cool to get a glimpse into her life and the things that she was thinking about as she was getting famous, as well as when a lot of controversies and big events happened. And it is the most perfect thing for this challenge. The next challenge is to find a book written by someone with a very common name. Alright, so here I have a book called, I don't know if I know how to pronounce this, The Plantagenets? You know what, it's a history book on this dynasty of British rulers, and it is written by an author named Dan Jones, which sounds super basic to me. The next task is to find a book with a close-up of something on it, and I just realized the last book could have worked because it had a close-up of a sword hilt, but I'm not going to reuse books, so let's try to find something different. Alright, so this is kind of like a middle grade book called The False Prince, and has a close-up of a broken crown on it. So the next task is to find a book set in the earliest time period on my bookshelf. So remember when I brought out the Mahabharata Secret? The back of it said something about like something BC. Alright, so part of this book is set in 244 BC, but I feel like that might not be the earliest book that I can find. Alright, so I pulled out the Iliad, which is set in 1250 BCE. This is definitely the oldest book in terms of when it was written in my collection, but it might also be the oldest book in terms of setting as well. The next task is to find a hardcover book without a jacket. Alright, so I don't know if y'all were as obsessed with Percy Jackson as I was, but I got this book called The Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Ultimate Survival Guide. It has descriptions of gods and a whole bunch of other stuff, but as you can see, it is a hardback book without a jacket. The next task is to find a teal or turquoise book, and it's so funny because that book would have worked for this challenge, but now I can't use it. Alright, so when I thought of a teal book, this is the first book that came to mind. It is Chanel Miller's Know My Name. This is a really powerful story about sexual assault and the trauma the victims go through when trying to report sexual assault. As a Stanford student, this book is extra important to me. It is about something that happened on the campus that I go to school in, and it's important that I'm aware of the things that need to change within the institution. The next task is to find a book with stars on it, and I don't think that should be too difficult because I feel like that's relatively common. Y'all, I'm so surprised that Peter and the Starcatchers doesn't have stars on it. That's kind of disappointing. Okay, I have to keep looking. Okay, so I pulled out the book Of Fire and Stars. I was just trying to find books with stars in the title and hope that there would be stars in the cover as well, and there are. There are lots of little stars all over the cover. And the last and final challenge is to find a non-YA book. And that definitely will not be too hard because here I have all of my adult nonfiction books and all of my adult fiction books. So the book that I decided to pull from my adult nonfiction section is Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson. I actually had the pleasure of being able to watch him speak live when I went to a leadership conference in my sophomore year of high school, and he is an absolutely amazing speaker and an amazing human being. This book is about the prison system and his work trying to help prisoners on death row get out of death row. He has done some amazing work within the criminal justice system, trying to fix some of the inequality that exists in the system. I highly recommend reading this book. This was a super fun challenge. It definitely reminded me of a lot of the books that I have on my shelf. And while, of course, not all of the books that I've ever read are on the shelf, a lot of the books came from the library or online or audiobooks, it's still fun to kind of look through this bookshelf, look at some of the books that I've read or that I want to read, I think once libraries open up again, it would be really cool to do this in a library as well. So you definitely don't have to own any books to do this. Let me know if you'd like to see me do any other kinds of challenges. I'm thinking of maybe creating a challenge for LGBTQ+ books, or maybe a challenge about diverse books in general, so let me know if you'd like to see that. And as always, I love you. Bye!